Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're zooming in on how high-powered satellite imagery hasn't just mapped our world, it's actually exposed some of its strangest and most heavily guarded secrets. You know, pretty much every corner of the Earth has been photographed in unbelievable detail to help millions of us find our way around. But occasionally, peering down from space reveals things that are intentionally obscured, mysteriously built, or just flat out not what they seem.
So let me ask you a really simple question. When you pull up a map on your phone, how much of reality is actually being hidden from your view? We all tend to trust these digital tools completely, right? We just assume they offer a literal, unfiltered window into the world. But as you're about to see, the map in your pocket is actually heavily curated. Let's start with Section 1, Hiding in Plain Sight, Government and Military Censorship. To really understand this, we first have to look at intentional blind spots, places that governments have specifically asked Google to scrub from the public eye. Take a look at this gorgeous, historic square in Spain that is completely blurred out on your digital map. It's the Courtyard of the Oranges in Córdoba, widely considered the oldest garden in all of Europe. It actually dates all the way back to an 8th century mosque, and yet you can't see its beautiful fountains or cypress trees from space. This intentional blurring has sparked all sorts of wild speculation about secret underground institutions hidden right beneath the surface. And honestly, this highlights a global pattern of censorship. In Poland, you've got blurry spots hiding DeGrom headquarters, which is an elite anti-terror unit. Over in Russia, there are these super strange hexagonal warehouses hidden in dense woods, carefully spaced apart to prevent explosive chain reactions. Up in Alaska, access to a massive 1970s subterranean nuclear test site is totally restricted. And then there's Jeannette Island in the East Siberian Sea, just completely blacked out, most likely because of territorial disputes between Russia and the US. Even massive environmental hazards get the blur treatment. Now, that number, 1 million, represents the liters of radioactive waste that Greenpeace claims is dumped daily by a heavily blurred-out French nuclear reprocessing plant called Orano-La Hague. This massive facility handles half of the world's total light water reactor fuel reprocessing capacity. It takes in spent fuel from all over the globe. So, because of major environmental concerns and the super high likelihood of protests, Google actually agreed to severely limit how much of the plant's layout you can see publicly. Section 2, Secret Symbols and Structures. Subtitle, Cults, Art, and Calibration. Because as it turns out, it's not just governments hiding things. Human behavior leaves some pretty massive and confusing footprints on the Earth that you can only really see from orbit. Take the Trementina Base deep in the New Mexico desert. The crucial point here is that the Church of Scientology, which is affiliated with Scientology, allegedly built this remote facility in the late 1980s to withstand the actual end of the world. Beneath the surface, there's a vast network of vaults meant to preserve the writings of their founder, L. Ron Hubbard. But on the surface, they built massive interlocking circles and diamonds, literally designed to guide followers back home after humanity is destroyed. Wild, right? But sometimes that view from space just leads to complete misunderstandings. When internet sleuths found a massive 1,200-foot pentagram carved into an isolated corner of Kazakhstan, well, they obviously assumed the worst. The theories spiraled into satanic rituals and ancient secret societies. But the reality? It actually just turned out to be a forgotten boundary for a lakeside park from the Soviet era. The star shape was just a super popular civic symbol back then. Meanwhile, if you spot these gigantic grid lines scattered across China's Gobi Desert, don't worry, they aren't messages to aliens. They are actually massive physical calibration targets for China's spy satellites. These lines are basically huge grooves dug right into the desert floor and painted. And because they're so huge, measuring over a mile long, experts say it suggests the satellites at the time had pretty poor ground resolution compared to other countries. So they needed a gigantic physical target just to help orient and focus their cameras in space. We also see just sheer artistic scale from above. Take this 1997 Greek art installation in the Egyptian desert called Desert Breath. To pull this off, the artist had to displace 10,000 cubic yards of sand to form 89 protruding cones and 89 depressed cones. They all spiral out around this massive central pool of water, covering an astonishing 25 acres. From the ground, you'd barely notice it, but from a satellite view, it is an absolute masterpiece. All right, moving on to Section 3, Illusions and Phantom Geographies, When Nature and Tech Trick the Eye. Let's look at what happens when nature creates mind-bending optical illusions, or when mapmakers just get the data fundamentally wrong. Check out the mysterious Blood Lake just outside Sadr City in Iraq. Its deep red color actually fluctuates throughout the year. Initial rumors went totally off the rails, blaming local butchers for dumping off cuts and blood into the water. But honestly, the sheer volume you'd need to stain a lake that size makes that impossible. And while some lakes definitely turn pink from microorganisms, researchers believe this lake is most likely a highly toxic chemical dump from a local plant. So it looks incredible from space for sure, but you absolutely do not want to swim in it. On a much lighter note, we have the Badlands Guardian in Alberta, Canada. A random map browser actually found this back in 2005. And get this, it's not a carved monument at all. It is a completely natural drainage feature where clay-rich soil was sculpted by wind and water over hundreds of years. It just accidentally looks exactly like a human head wearing a headdress. Even better, a local road runs right past the ear, giving the optical illusion from space that this geological formation is just chilling out listening to some music. Oh, and incredibly, it's actually a concave valley, not a hill sticking out of the ground. And then there are the phantom places. This timeline explains perfectly how a completely fake landmass called Sandy Island in the Coral Sea managed to trick satellite maps for years. See, before satellites, cartographers would sometimes use a bit of artistic license, or they just made mistakes that took years to correct. When Google Earth launched, it didn't have high-res imagery everywhere yet, so it leaned heavily on those flawed historical maps. It wasn't until 2012 when a research vessel called the RV Southern Surveyor literally sailed straight through the coordinates that the world realized the island simply did not exist. Sometimes, though, the illusion is just a spectacularly unfortunate architectural coincidence. This church in Illinois proudly opened in 2013 with the motto, "Rising Up." It was specially designed to curve around an existing oak tree and face south for energy efficiency. The congregation absolutely loved it until someone showed them its hilarious, somewhat inappropriate shape from the sky. The architects swear up and down it was a total accident based purely on the building's requirements. Let's wrap up with Section 4, the Great Chinese GPS Shift. Subtitle, The Ultimate Disguise. Beyond singular mistakes or natural illusions, this is the most massive, systemic manipulation of map data in the entire world. If you've ever fired up GPS in Beijing, you might have noticed something totally bizarre. The roads look like they pass straight through buildings, or your pin drops a full block away from where you actually are. That's because the entire country legally mandates the use of this skewed coordinate system for national security. It's playfully known as Mars coordinates, and it was originally engineered back during the Cold War to specifically confuse foreign intelligence. This is a perfect example of how digital mapping isn't always some objective truth. It's a highly controlled asset. If you call a rideshare in China, the driver usually has to call you because the map is useless for pinpointing your exact spot. Even the geotagging on your smartphone photos is deliberately misaligned. It is a massive, countrywide safeguard designed to make it incredibly difficult for anyone to plan strategic actions against them. Now, the artists who built that fading desert breath installation we talked about earlier, they said it was, quote, intended to show the transient nature of life and existence. Over time, the water evaporated and the sand eroded right back into the desert. But honestly, I think that quote beautifully describes our digital maps, too. They're constantly shifting, changing, and totally transient. From nuclear cover-ups hiding under blurry pixels in Alaska, to phantom islands that literally never existed, to entirely offset GPS coordinates across China, we've seen throughout this explainer that satellites really don't capture an absolute unfiltered reality. They capture a reality shaped by governments, natural optical illusions, and of course, human error. So I want to leave you with this thought. The next time you pull out your phone to zoom in on a random empty stretch of desert, a blurred-out city block, or even just a perfectly normal-looking neighborhood, I want you to ask yourself, if the digital map in your pocket is lying to you right now, what else is hiding in plain sight?